Sailing. Sailing at the Olympics is like a high-stakes game of chess on water. Athletes race sailboats of different sizes and shapes, using the wind to power their way around a course marked by buoys. Sailors need to be part athlete, part weather person, and part strategist. They're constantly adjusting their sails and position based on wind direction and strength, while also trying to outmaneuver their opponents. Here's an interesting detail. Olympic sailors often hike out of their boats, leaning their bodies way over the side to keep the boat from tipping over in strong winds. They use special harnesses and have super strong core muscles. It's like doing a really long, wet plank exercise while racing. Despite all the fancy equipment, sometimes the wind decides who wins. Fencing. Fencing at the Olympics is like a lightning-fast sword fight, but safer. Two athletes called fencers try to score points by touching each other with the tip of their sword. They wear white suits that look like spacesuits, complete with a mask to protect their face. There are three types of swords used: foil, epee, and saber. Each has different rules about where you can hit your opponent to score. Quick detail: fencers are connected to electronic scoring systems by wires. When a valid hit is made, a light flashes and a buzzer sounds. It's like a real-life video game. This system was introduced because fencing moves were too fast for judges to see with their eyes alone. Despite all the jabbing and slashing, fencing is known as a very polite and respectful sport. Archery. Archery at the Olympics is like a super precise game of darts, but with bows and arrows instead. Archers shoot at targets from 70 meters away. That's about as long as two basketball courts. They aim for a target with colored rings, and the closer to the center, the more points they score. Archers use high-tech bows with sights and stabilizers to help them aim better. It takes incredible focus and steady hands to hit the bullseye consistently. Here's an interesting detail. Some Olympic archers use a technique called string walking. They place their fingers at different spots on the bowstring for different distances, kind of like how a guitarist changes finger positions to play different notes. It's a clever way to adjust their aim without moving the sight on their bow. Shooting. Shooting at the Olympics is like a high-stakes game of target practice. Athletes use rifles, pistols, or shotguns to hit targets with amazing accuracy. Some events have stationary targets, while others feature moving targets called clays that fly through the air. Shooters need super steady hands, great eyesight, and nerves of steel. Even their heartbeat can affect their aim, so they learn to control their breathing and stay super calm. Here's a funny detail. In some rifle events, shooters wear special jackets and pants that look really stiff and uncomfortable. These aren't just for style. They're actually designed to support the shooter's body and reduce movement. It's like wearing a standing-up sleeping bag to help them stay perfectly still while aiming. Equestrian. Equestrian at the Olympics is like dancing with horses. It's the only Olympic sport where humans team up with animals. There are three main types: dressage, horse ballet; show jumping, horse hurdles; and eventing, a horse triathlon. In dressage, horses perform fancy moves guided by almost invisible signals from their riders. Show jumping is all about leaping over obstacles without knocking them down. Eventing combines dressage, jumping, and cross-country riding. Here's an interesting detail. In Olympic equestrian events, men and women compete against each other equally. It's one of the few Olympic sports where this happens. The bond between rider and horse is so important that some riders say their horses are like their dance partners or teammates. It's a true partnership of human and animal athleticism. Canoeing. Canoeing at the Olympics is like a water race with paddles. It's split between two main types: sprinting, racing on flat water, and slalom, navigating through gates on rushing water. In sprint, athletes power through straight courses as fast as they can. Slalom is trickier. Paddlers zip through hanging gates on wild, foamy rivers, trying not to touch them. It's like a water obstacle course. Quirky detail: in canoe slalom, the water isn't natural. It's man-made. The course is created using huge pumps to make rapids and waves. Course designers can change the water flow to make different challenges. So these Olympians aren't just battling nature. They're taking on a custom-built water puzzle that can be adjusted to be as tricky as the designers want. Taekwondo. Taekwondo at the Olympics is like a super fast kickboxing match. Two athletes try to score points by landing kicks and punches on their opponent's body and head. They wear protective gear and fight on a small square mat. The coolest moves in Taekwondo are the high kicks. Athletes can score big points by kicking their opponent in the head. It's like soccer, but the goal is someone's face. Funny detail: Taekwondo fighters wear electronic socks and vests that automatically score points when hit with enough force. It's like wearing a video game controller. This high-tech gear was introduced to make scoring fairer and more exciting for spectators. So when you see the scoreboard light up, you know someone just landed a powerful kick. Weightlifting. Weightlifting at the Olympics is like a superhero contest to see who's the strongest. Athletes lift really heavy bars loaded with weights, trying to hoist more than anyone else in their weight class. There are two different types of lifts: the snatch, lifting the bar from the ground to above your head in one smooth motion, and the clean and jerk, lifting the bar to your shoulders, then pushing it overhead. Here's an interesting detail. Weightlifters often let out loud grunts or yells when lifting. It's not just for show, it actually helps. This technique, called the Valsalva maneuver, increases pressure in the lifter's chest, which helps stabilize their spine during the lift. So when you hear those mighty roars, you're witnessing a key part of their lifting strategy. Golf. Golf at the Olympics is like a multi-day race with tiny balls and clubs. Players try to hit a small ball into a series of holes using as few strokes as possible. The course is full of challenges like sand traps, water hazards, and tricky greens. Golfers play 4 rounds over 4 days, and the player with the lowest total score wins. It's a game of precision, strategy, and mental toughness. Here's an amusing insight. Olympic golf has a unique history. It was included in 1900 and 1904. Then it disappeared for over a century. It finally made a comeback in 2016 after a 112-year break. That's the longest gap for any Olympic sport. Talk about a long time in the clubhouse. Rugby sevens. Rugby sevens at the Olympics is like regular rugby's faster, wilder cousin. It's played with 7 players on each team instead of the usual 15 on a full-size field. This means there's a lot more space for players to run around, making the game super quick and exciting. Matches are short, lasting only 14 minutes, split into 2 7-minute halves. It's like a game of speed, skill, and stamina, with lots of scoring. Here's a quirky detail. In rugby sevens, conversions, kicks after a try, must be taken within 30 seconds. The kicker usually does a drop kick instead of placing the ball on the ground. This means they drop the ball and kick it as it bounces up. It's like trying to kick a bouncing ball through goalpost while a timer ticks down. Triathlon. Triathlon at the Olympics is like a 3-sport race all mashed into one. Athletes swim, bike, and run in that order without stopping. It's a test of endurance, speed, and the ability to switch between different sports quickly. The Olympic triathlon starts with a 1.5-kilometer swim in open water, followed by a 40-kilometer bike ride, and finishes with a 10-kilometer run. It's like doing 3 tough workouts back to back to back. Here's an interesting detail. Between each part of the race, athletes dash through an area called the transition zone. Here, they quickly change gear and shoes. These transitions are so important that triathletes practice them like a 4th sport. Some can swap from swimming to biking gear in less than 30 seconds. It's like a high-speed costume change in the middle of a race. Modern pentathlon. Modern pentathlon at the Olympics is like being a secret agent for a day. It combines 5 different sports: fencing, swimming, horse riding, shooting, and running. Athletes need to be good at everything. They start with fencing, then swim 200 meters. Next, they ride a horse they've just met over a jumping course. Finally, they do a combined event of shooting and running, where they stop to shoot targets between running laps. Here's an interesting detail. In the horse riding part, athletes are given just 20 minutes to bond with a horse they've never ridden before. It's like going on a blind date, but instead of dinner, you have to jump over obstacles together. This tests the athlete's ability to quickly understand and work with their animal partner. Sport climbing. Sport climbing at the Olympics is like a mix of Spider-Man and a puzzle solver. It combines 3 different types of climbing: speed climbing, racing up a wall; bouldering, solving climbing puzzles; and lead climbing, going as high as possible with a rope. In speed climbing, 2 athletes race side by side up identical 15-meter walls. Bouldering challenges climbers to figure out how to get to the top of shorter but trickier walls. Lead climbing tests how high they can go on a really tall wall within a time limit. Here's a funny detail. Climbers use a special chalk on their hands, but it's not the same as gymnast chalk. It's often a liquid chalk that dries quickly and lasts longer. Some climbers even have secret recipes for their chalk mixtures to get that perfect grip. Skateboarding. Skateboarding at the Olympics is like bringing a skate park to the world stage. There are two types, street and park. In street, skaters do tricks on stuff you'd find in a city, like stairs and railings. Park is more like a giant empty swimming pool with curves and ramps for big air tricks. Skaters get a set time to show off their best moves. Judges score them on how hard their tricks are, how well they do them, and how cool they look overall. Quick detail, some Olympic skateboarders are super young. In the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, the youngest medal winner was just 13 years old. It's one of the few Olympic sports where teenagers can compete against and often beat adults twice their age. Talk about youngsters showing up the grown-ups. Surfing. Surfing at the Olympics is like bringing the beach party to the biggest sports event in the world. Surfers ride ocean waves on specially designed boards, performing tricks and maneuvers to impress the judges. Each surfer catches several waves during a heat, with their best two scores counting. Judges look at how difficult their moves are, how big the wave is, and how smoothly they ride it. Interesting detail, Olympic surfing depends a lot on Mother Nature. Unlike other sports with predictable playing fields, surf conditions can change quickly. Sometimes organizers even use a wave forecaster to help decide when to hold events. It's the only Olympic sport where athletes might have to wait for nature to provide the right equipment. Big waves. Breakdancing. Breaking, also known as breakdancing, is the newest kid on the Olympic block. It's like a dance battle meets gymnastics, all set to hip-hop beats. Breakers, that's what the dancers are called, face off one-on-one, showing off their best moves in short performances called runs. Judges score breakers on creativity, personality, technique, variety, and performativity. It's not just about doing cool moves, it's about telling a story with your body and owning the dance floor. Breaking has its own languages. Moves have funky names like freezes, top rock, and power moves. For example, a baby freeze is when a breaker balances their whole body on one hand and the side of their head. It's like a super cool upside down pose that requires serious strength and balance.